Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever the case may be when you see this video. Today's video has quite a bit of scripture I want to read. And I want to ask a question, and I want to think of it in a spiritual sense, not a physical sense. The question being, where's your tent? And I'm talking not like where's your house located. My house is located in Reese City. My car is parked out front of the building here. Not physical like that, but spiritually, where is your tent this morning? We all have a tent. We've all pitched a tent in this world somewhere, spiritually speaking, looking toward something in a spiritual setting. So as we read this, I want you to think of where have you pitched your tent in the world? And I want to give, because with this, I believe there's a couple of warnings that we have to be aware of in this scripture. When pitching our tent, be mindful of where we are. Be mindful of what we're looking at. Be mindful of what our surroundings are and what we're allowing in and where we are. But I've got a little bit better editing these videos, so maybe if this works out, all the scripture is going to pop across the screen here as I read, because it is quite a bit, but I would like for you to be able to read along with me if you can. Scripture is going to come from Genesis chapter 13, very familiar passage. I'm going to read verses 1 through 12. So Genesis 13, starting in the first verse. 13:1 says, And Abram went up out of Egypt, he and his wife, and all that he had, and Lot with him, into the south. And Abram was very rich in cattle, and silver, and in gold. And he went on his journeys from the south even to Bethel, and to the place where his tent had been at the beginning, between Bethel and Hai. I guess that's how you pronounce that word. Verse 4, it says, Unto the place of the altar which he had made there at the first. And there Abram called on the name of the Lord. And Lot also, which went with Abram, had flocks and herds and tents. And the land was not able to bear them, that they might dwell together, for their substance was great, so that they could not dwell together. Verse 7, it says, And there was a strife between the herdmen of Abram's cattle and the herdmen of Lot's cattle. And the Canaanite and the Perizzite dwelled then in the land. And Abram said unto Lot, Let there be no strife, I pray thee, between me and thee, and between my herdmen and thy herdmen, for we be brethren. Is not the whole land before thee? Separate thyself, I pray thee, from me. If thou wilt take the left hand, then I will take the right. Or if thou depart to the right hand, then I will go to the left. And Lot lifted up his eyes, and beheld the plain of Jordan, that it was well watered everywhere. Everywhere before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, even as the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt, as thou comest unto Zoar. Then Lot chose him all the plain of Jordan, and Lot journeyed east, and they separated themselves one from another. Abram dwelled in the land of Canaan, and Lot dwelled in the cities of the plain, and pitched his tent towards Sodom. So spiritually speaking, where have you pitched your tent today in the world? Here in the scripture we read that they came, and there came a time where they had to separate. And there's a time of separation where we have to decide where we're going to pitch our tent. And two things when we're deciding where we're going in life spiritually, where we're going to, in our heart, pitch our tent, that I think we have to be mindful of here. Number one is sin looks good on the outside. It says here that Lot lifted up his eyes. This is in verse 10. Lot lifted up his eyes and beheld the plain of Jordan, that it was well watered everywhere. It was pretty before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. Even as the garden of the Lord. As pretty as the Garden of Eden. It looked really nice. It looked like the land of Egypt as thou comest out of Zoar. It says, and Lot shows him all that plain. He looked at it. It looked good on the outside, but we know from the story of Sodom and Gomorrah it was not a good place to be pitching his tent. We look at a lot of things that's pleasing to the eye, and we spiritually go after it. But just because it looks good doesn't mean it's best for us. In James, I believe it's in the first chapter, he talks about sin. He says, when it's finished, it bringeth forth death. So if we're pitching our tent in the middle of sin, it's going to end not so well. Just because it looks good, just because it sounds good, just because it feels good, doesn't mean that's where we need to be. Sin has pleasure for a season, but after the season, sin produces death. So be mindful. They say the grass is not always greener on the other side. Well, Satan will make his grass look greener. He'll make sin look wonderful. Have you ever seen, I don't know, a beer commercial that they didn't try to make the beer look like it tasted wonderful? Have you ever seen a movie that they put out ads that made the movie look boring or stupid, or think of all these, what do you see most ads use? Male and female supermodels. They don't find the fat, ugly people like me to promote their stuff because I don't look good. They can make it look good on the outside. Sin looks good for a season, but in the end it bringeth forth death. Also, we need to be aware that we can't pitch our tent in two places. We have one tent. I have one heart. I can't split my heart in half and give it to God on Sunday and give it to the world Monday through Saturday. It doesn't work that way. Matthew 6:24 says, no man can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he'll hold to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon. One, he says cannot. He don't say it might be possible, but it's not going to be easy. He says you cannot serve both God and mammon. And if you look, these are red letter words in my Bible, which means Jesus said them. You can't pitch your tent in two different cities. Joshua told the people at the end of Joshua, he said, look, here's what we've been through. Here's the Lord I'm going to follow. Here's the Lord or the gods of Egypt. Choose you this day which ones you're going to serve. Separate yourself and decide, I'm in this camp or I'm in this camp, but get your tent settled and get it somewhere. Elijah told them when the prophets of Baal, they had their little showdown. He said, how long halt you between two opinions? If the Lord be God, follow him. If Baal be God, follow him. Basically, he said, choose you this day which one you're going to follow, because you can't follow both. We can't, as a Christian, live with one foot in both worlds. It doesn't work. Christianity is not a Burger King Christianity. Burger King says, what is your way? Have it your way. You can't have it your way. You have to have it God's way or your way. That's the two choices we have today. So I want to ask you to think about your life. Think about your day-to-day going-ons. Is that a real word? The things that you participate in, the things that you look forward to, the things that you spend your time and your money seeking after. Which direction is your tent facing today? Are you facing God, or are you facing, as Lot chose, what looked good on the outside, Sodom and Gomorrah, but what was eat up on the inside and was ultimately destroyed? And I say that, let me look at this. If you look back in verses 3 and 4, we're talking about Abram, who is Abraham. It says, Abram, as he went on his journeys from the south, even to Bethel, unto the place where he first pitched his tent at the beginning, Bethel, where he had been in the beginning, unto the place of the altar which he had made there at the first. That's in verse 4. Bethel, his first place he pitched his tent. Then there came a famine and they moved out. We are where we are now. But Bethel was the first place he pitched that tent. He built an altar to God there. Then you come down to chapter 13, verse 18. It says, then Abram removed his tent and came and dwelled in the plain of Mamre, which is in Hebron and built there an altar unto the Lord. He returned sometimes, and you'll find this again later on with Jacob when he becomes named Israel. He was at a place called Bethel, and he moved away, and then he had to return to Bethel. If we find our tent in the wrong place, if we find our tent looking at sin and desiring and lusting after that, or we find that we're trying to pitch our tent on the Calhoun County, Etowah County, or Etowah County, Marshall County, whatever county, you make up two counties, there's a county line in between them. If we've got our tent pitched there, I know some people who live on the county line, and it's like, I've got this county does my electricity, this county does my gas, this county has my phone number, this county has my address. We can't do that spiritually. We can't have God providing our phone number and our water and Satan providing our mailing address and the power bill. It doesn't work that way. So just like Joshua said, choose you this day. But what I want to encourage you is, if you are trying to build your tent on the middle of the county line and live in both worlds, or you're looking towards sin and it looks good and that's where you're putting your tent today, maybe it's time to move our tent back to Bethel and rebuild our altar and get back to where we need to be. So I don't know what that meant to anybody else. I like that part. I like studying on the tents and where we are in our life. And I have to think about that myself. Where's my tent? What am I focused on? How can I refocus my focus? What do I need to do better? Because I'm not perfect either. So go out there, be bold, share your gospel, and we'll have another one of these hopefully soon.